special sessions, thrive, survive, enabling personal growth in times of adversity. Again, we have three outstanding speakers. Faridin Dotiwala is a partner McKinsey and leadership at McKinsey leadership team, and Santanam, chairman and managing director of Saint Gobain Private Limited, and Jairam Vard. Get all the logins soon, and we look forward to seeing you there. Coming to today's event, I must thank Mr. Ram Kumar when he spoke to me that he wanted to do an event on this line, something to do with education. I said, Saito, you please tell me the date. And we have been pushing him, and I think next 2 months we are conceptualized and putting together one outstanding event. I know each one of you are going to be immensely benefited from the outcome and deliberation of this talk this evening. Emerging trends and transformational changes in management education. And to lead the discussion and also to set the context, we have Mr. Ram Kumar, who will be chairman of Shanti Gears and past president of MMA. And distinguished guest of honor for this evening is Professor Adbir Singh, director. He is from the Wharton School, USA, and also Raghuraman, former director of professor from IIM Bangalore, and our own LS Ganesh, professor, Department of Management Studies, retired, Indian Institute of Technology, will be leading the conversation. May I request Professor LS Ganesh to please come onto the stage? As I mentioned, is on big round of applause to Professor LS Ganesh. Uh, this hybrid event, we have a gentleman joined us, Professor Harbir joined us from USA, Bangalore. We have Ram Kumar from different part of Chennai. So we have viewers from all over the India. We have brought in one platform, and it's indeed a privilege for us to present you. Interesting event. I know we have connected to all the educational institutions in this part of the country and India. We expect a large number of participants. Let me have the privilege of introducing Mr. Ram Kumar. I have singularly had the privilege of working president a couple of years back. One of the excellent time he had, and Ram Kumar is from MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, and 4 decades of experience in diverse industries, and was managing director of TI between 2018, and he was also a past president of Madras Management Association, member of the board of governors IIM Budgaya. So he got a first-hand knowledge of what's happening in IIMs, and he's also got one of the prestigious award of Layla Alumni Award, Business Leadership of the Year Award 2018. And very warm welcome to Ram Kumar. Now I request Mr. Ram Kumar. The format of the session is as usual, which we do every week. Every Ram Kumar will introduce speakers for this. And if you have any questions, please put it in your chat box. And as usual, there's a number in your YouTube, Facebook, and you can send your question. My team is here. They collect all the questions, and the speakers and the panelists are more than willing and more than happy to respond to all your queries. Please share your queries. This is a place where you can ask all that you want to know about the management, the management. Over to you, Mr. Ram Kumar.
Thank you, Vijay. Distinguished members of the panel, Professor Harbir, Professor Raghuram, Dr. Ganesh, members of Madras Management Association, and invitees from all across the world. KAS, who is a co-sponsor, they have been very supportive of the various events of MMA, especially during this pandemic time. Faculty and management students from various business schools, ladies and gentlemen, a very, very warm welcome to all of you and a very good evening to you. Let me start with a bit about MMA for the benefit of those who are attending this program for the first time. MMA is the largest local management association in the country under the aegis of All India Management Association. We have 7,000 members consisting of corporates, small-scale industrialists, professionals, academicians, and students. MMA conducts various programs like seminars, talks, conventions. Group Captain Vijay Kumar talked about on specific year. We have signature conventions of annual convention, students convention, and women's convention, which are the signature events of the Madras Management Association. This year too, we are still doing it online. And we have normally around 750 various events, which is attended by something like 75,000 people in a normal year. Madras Management Association, I'm also very glad to say, has won the Best Management Association Award for the last 11 years in a row. So that speaks something about the organizing capability and the content of the various programs. Now, coming to how we are managed in this period of the pandemic, we talk about transformation in this particular topic in management education. I think there's a case study going on here at MMA on the transformation that took place since April 2020. First of all, with the lockdown and people getting stuck at home, MMA realized, and I give a lot of credit to Group Captain and his secretariat and the current president and the managing committee to have thought through this. They said we need to go beyond the normal management education. So they had very popular programs on quizzes, on puzzles, then even yoga sessions, which are eagerly looked forward to because people are not able to go out during the strict lockdown session. Later, it was realized that the digitalization is going to give us a huge advantage in terms of getting the best of speakers nationwide and internationally. One of the examples is what we are doing today. So we said that let us do this, and thus started the Leaders Speak series. The Leaders Speak series, we have covered wide-ranging topics of strategy, brand management, geopolitics, then diversity, inclusiveness, digital transformation, and what have you. So here, not only did we get the best of speakers from anywhere in the world, we also cut across geographies. Otherwise, it had to be largely in a physical format with some kind of videography, which we are doing from our live IBC, etc., but not at the scale which we are doing today. You must be seeing all those icons in the invite, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, etc., etc. So this program is being covered through all those mediums. So I would say the MMA turned the whole thing on its head, and then we are off to something like 1.8 lakh participants who have participated in the various programs since April 2020, this year. So this says that there is a huge opportunity for us to do this. And today, as group captain was saying, we are moving further forward. So we're having a hybrid model. One of our speakers, Dr. Ganesh, is joining us from the MMA Center. All the others are joining from various places through Zoom. Now, talking about this entire topic of education, I have had my baby steps in this management education with the induction into the board of IIM Bodh. I must acknowledge the great wisdom and the thoughts I used to get from Harbir and Raghuram. So before I joined, actually, I made a visit to Raghuram's house in IIM Bangalore. We spent a day, me and another person who joined one of the other institutes, in order to get from them, what is going on and what we need to do. Same happened with Harbir also. Over many calls, etc., we did. So that's the reason why we got you, right? So they didn't realize at that time that they're going to get caught for this. But then I think we realized that in India, with the world changing digitalization, as well as the customers' expectations going through the roof, I think the organizations are changing very fast. The question is, has our management education kept pace with this? I'm not sure how much it has happened in India. I mean, Dr. Raghuram is definitely the worthy candidate to talk about it. I am not the authority, but there has been a mushrooming of business schools. There are too many people starting management institutes. That has not helped us in any form at all. So we need a certain kind of a dynamic approach to this education and how it is being managed. It's not going to be all classroom learning, henceforth. I think there has to be a lot of learning outside the classroom as well. We find that typical business school, if they start, with a view to maybe imparting education as well as make it commercially successful, look at creating a future manager of a blue chip company. Here, the emphasis is on some set pattern of education, which creates a risk-free guy, not necessarily very entrepreneurial. Today, an entrepreneurship is required even in a regular job with the changing environment. So we see that in many of the institutes, entrepreneurship is only an elective. It is not a compulsory thing. So we believe that we need to have more entrepreneurship, higher weightage that needs to be given in order to create more and more entrepreneurs. So given this, and also the fact that we need to know what is happening elsewhere in the world, we thought that we should connect with the best in the business, thought leaders, as it were. So that is why we thought of this panel. Now I'll come to the task of introducing the panelists. There is quite a bit on them in the brochure. I don't want to repeat all of them, but I can tell you it's my pleasure, privilege. I'm also quite excited because Raghuram and Harbir were my classmates and good friends, and we have been in touch. And when I spoke to them, the kind of warmth and enthusiasm they showed towards this topic actually made us get more and more motivated to get this done. Harbir is director of the Huntsman. Let me get it right. I don't want to. Yeah, Director Huntsman Program for International Studies and Business in Wharton School. It's he's joining us from Philadelphia. I'm sure many of you know how it is in Philadelphia now. It is snowing and it's around 7:45 a.m. in the morning. We really appreciate this, Harbir. You're taking time off to be with us. You're looking very fresh, much more fresh than all of us. Probably we got up very early. You got up just now. And Harbir is actually done his PhD from the well-known University of Michigan. University of Michigan those days was the mecca of strategy. The prophet himself was there, which is Dr. C.K. Prahlad. And Harbir recalls with fond memories his interactions with him and how Dr. C.K. Prahlad kind of shaped his thinking, developed him, etc. And Harbir is today a well-known authority in the area of strategy and international business. And no wonder that he's been conferred the coveted Distinguished Scholar Practitioner Award in memory of Dr. C.K. Prahlad. I don't think he would have asked for anything better when he interacted with Dr. C.K. Prahlad. It's almost like a Nobel Prize in the area of strategy. We're very proud to have you here, Harbir. And I also remember Harbir as an aside, beyond what has been published, is I always used to think when I introduced my classmates in such forums is, what did we think of these guys when they were in the class in IIM? So Harbir was a very articulate person, smooth talker. He's the kind of a guy you can drop a topic and he can talk in just a minute and go on and on with a great sense of subtle humor, actually. So I think he was not a guy who was making regular class participation, CP, as you say. But whenever he spoke, I think it will be with rapt attention because we know what's coming. You know, you can't make out from his straight face. We used to quite enjoy this, and I'm sure Harbir, we're going to enjoy the same articulation and the kind of humor from your talk. We are really looking forward to it and welcome. Now, coming to Dr. Raghuram. Raghuram has just stepped down as Director of Indian Institute of Management. Within a short time, he's done some fantastic work in IIM Bangalore, transformational changes, what we call. He's also been mentoring many institutions. Like he's brought up the Indian Institute of Management, Vizag, which is one of the newer institutes, but very well rated, thanks to his own involvement. Very passionate about whatever he does. We have seen this even in IIM, even when he makes class participation or he takes up some project, whether it is doing some outside, you know, we used to have a lot of trips outside. Raghu used to do it with such precision and detailing that we used to think he's very passionate. We can see that in whatever he does. As they say, at IIM, many people found the love of their life, and Raghuram fell in love with IIMA itself. So he dedicated his life, most of his career, to teaching and development of the institute, but for a few years where he has come to IIM Bangalore, and now he's back to Ahmedabad. And Raghuram's passionate areas are transportation, railways, and he has been advising many government committees on policy making. And definitely we look forward to your passionate contribution, Raghu. Thank you again very much. He's been shuttling between Bangalore and Ahmedabad by road. That is one of his passions. He likes to go to every part of the country by road, observe for himself. Otherwise, he goes by cycle, which makes people like me very happy because I come from a company which is making and manufacturing bicycles. And Raghuram is always a person, go-to man in case you wanted something and he is there within half a day to come back with these words of advice. And thank you again, Raghu, for being here and welcome to this program. And Dr. Ganesh, I've not known him as much as I've done the others, but I've had an interaction with him recently. And he's very well known in the management circles in this part of the country. And he is the professor, Department of Management Studies, IIT Madras. And he helped us a lot in putting this program together with his framework and insights. Overall, I can tell you, apart from attending this panel, they've also, all these three gentlemen have spared time to create and give shape to this program the way it is. And I really thank all of them for the valuable time. I'm sure you're going to have very good insights and takeaways at the end of the program. With this, once again, I welcome all of you to this program and I hope you enjoy this evening. Thank you very much. And over to you, Dr. Ganesh.
Thank you, Ram Kumar. Good evening. Very nice to meet you, Harbir and Raghu again at this panel discussion. I believe we had a very fruitful pre-panel discussion meeting just a few days ago. Welcome to the audience, and let me thank MMA for this honor and opportunity to moderate the discussion. As all of you would have realized, we have two very distinguished very highly accomplished academicians, Dr. Harbir and Dr. Raghuram, with us. And we wanted to time this panel discussion with the focus on the audience because we, we are aware that there'll be many, many people in the world of management education and in industry and business as well uh, who would be very keen to participate, to share their views, to raise questions, pass comments, and perhaps even share challenges and possible strategies to overcome the challenges as we go along in these what you may call as uh, these times which have laid a very large challenge to the whole of the human species, if you want to put it that way. But coming to management education, and particularly to the context of India, there will be, of course, we will obviously have to talk something about global management education or even regional and sub-regional. But India is the primary focus, and we wanted to focus particularly on giving a lot of time to the Q&A and particularly to the participants, because that we believe will enrich our discussion because we are all going to share whatever knowledge and experiences we have. And I'm sure there are very distinguished people in the audience, both really in front of me and virtually in the meeting. In fact, I could recognize a couple of friends when the pictures were bigger on the screen here in front of me. So this panel discussion is centered around three questions, which you will be aware, but not with a brief. The questions were given, and I will state the questions and then give a very brief introduction. I'll finish off in about a minute or two maximum. Okay? The first question is, what are the challenges and opportunities that present themselves now to management education? And the second question is, in what ways can institutional leaders manage all their resources while boldly attempting to effect the desired changes in the prevailing challenging environment? And the third question is, what should be the significant changes, the mindsets, and consequently the practices of institutional leaders? I hope you will underline the word mindsets, because that's a very, very big challenge for all of us in our lives. So what should be the significant changes in the mindsets and consequently the practices of institutional leaders and the faculty members? So we are looking at the institution from the perspective of the faculty in their initiatives and efforts to offer top quality and perfect value management education to their students. And this was the important point many of us have observed. Many of these students get exposed to the time their education to the body of knowledge constantly. This is a verifiable fact. The way you're talking of an undergraduate program or a postgraduate program in management, it's a verifiable fact that a very large proportion of our students are getting exposed to management education for the first time. And this means a lot because it means a lot from many angles, starting from the political strategies right down to the work done on the shop floors in the offices. So, but what was the background to these three questions? And with that, I will ask Mr. Raghu to start his response to the first question. The background is very simple. We've been observing the growth of management education in India, and today there are a few thousand institutions granting MBAs or diplomas or equivalent, and variety of the programs has also expanded very much. There's a huge variety MBA brackets program. You look at it. Now, this means a lot. It means a lot to the institutions. It means a lot to the leadership of the institutions. It means a lot to the faculty and their development in the institutions to make learning as enjoyable and valuable to the student. This is a very big challenge. And one big difference between management education in India and abroad is that ordinarily abroad, a student's application, particularly if the student has no work experience, will not be touched. So here we admit freshers, even people who come out from undergraduate 3-year undergraduate program. Now, is it right or wrong? I'm not going to debate, but it is a fact that in India this is happening. But we do have a good mix of students. So this is the thing. But as in engineering education, management education also suffers from a particular phenomenon we call the continental divide or the chasm. So you take some of the top institutions away, and then there's a continental divide in terms of the quality of education. So this question is a big challenge, and this is the background for this. We are in a time when we can reset our management because of whatever has happened during 2020. So we should take this opportunity. And I'm sure Raghu and Harbi will have a. So, Raghu, the first question goes to you. And as we had discussed, it would be good that you start with this because you immersed yourself in management for a few decades. And you're continuing your work in specific context, assisting institutions in their growth and development and the value they can offer to stakeholders, particularly students. So what do you think are the challenges and opportunities themselves in management education?
Thank you, Ganesh. I hope I'm audible to everybody, with some clarity.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Okay. So if I look at challenges and opportunities, I just thought I'm going to give sort of six aspects of why, especially in India, management education is still good business. Well, first, India is a growing economy. And I think there is hunger for professionals who understand the nature of organizations. Because to me, the management education is all about how do you design, create, and manage organizations. The second, there is continuing student interest, be it sometimes straight off, because that is a cultural attribute in India where people want to go right through and try to complete their education. They do bring in a certain fresh perspective into class. The second is people who have work experience and at some point realize the need to be able to understand organizations. So we have continuing student interest. And I want to highlight this because maybe Harbir, from the Western context of the US, there are concerns in many schools of reducing number of students coming into the programs. So that's the second part. The third, especially in India, we have opened up a lot of specialized programs. Now, whether that's good or not, we can debate. But in many ways, it's an opportunity and a challenge because, at IIMs, we were always told general management is the way to go. But partly to create a positioning and partly to address the needs of different sectors, a lot of specialized programs have come in. And right now, for example, I'm helping, advise and set up programs in maritime logistics, programs in supply chain management. So specialized programs are growing. Along with specialized programs, the idea of partnerships, and in specialized programs, one domain that is coming up that earlier had been hinted at is entrepreneurship. That's the third opportunity. The fourth is online. Even prior to COVID, I think the idea that we should bring online, attempt hybrid forms of delivery had come in. COVID in some ways has accelerated it, has enabled us to learn many things. And I think this is an opportunity that can be leveraged. The fifth is executive education or continuing education. where not necessarily a degree program, but we give people at different points of time, depending on the stage of their career and their interest, short modules. A lot of it has been happening as executive education programs. Today with online, the opportunities have gone up. Partnership models are also coming in here. And finally, I think maybe more as a challenge, the centerpiece of our ability to do all this with quality is, I think, the faculty. And I think that's a big challenge. And how we're going to handle it, of course, is something that we can discuss later. So to sum up, I think in the direction of quality, given that a lot of quantity has come in the Indian management ecosystem, our opportunities and challenges, the growing economy, continuing student interest, specialized programs and partnerships, online models, exec ed and continuing education, and finally the faculty. Yeah.
Thank you. I was planning to summarize and you did a wonderful job. That I'm very glad that you raised the flag on quality faculty, because the faculty is the multiplication for the we multiply student talent through faculty. You know, there's always this piece of wisdom that has come. One good faculty is about 30, 40. But the challenge is very often people do joke that good faculty multiply, bad faculty multiply more. You know? And that's a really difficult situation sometimes we face. And good that you touched upon.
Yeah. So Ganesh, just a small, maybe you should keep the mic as close as possible to, yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I was working on the audio environment inside the hall. And I'm sure your environment is very different. And I hope it's okay now. Is it okay?
Yeah, I think occasionally it breaks, probably when the mic moves away. Yeah.
Maybe I'll do my best. Thank you, Raghu. Thank you for that feedback. Hardeep, given your exposure globally and your roots, earlier roots in India, what would you say are the opportunities and challenges for management education, particularly in India, but given the reference of what's happening globally and what you can call as benchmarks in the global scene?
Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. It's a great privilege to speak to this audience about new evidence, new trends in management education, and I'm really delighted that we have a chance to do that. I have actually been involved also in the founding of the Indian School of Business, and I'm still an area leader there. So I've had plenty of exposure to at least one institution in the Indian setting. But like Raghu, I will offer a few points, and then in my case, they'll be organized by first the industry of education, business education, the second by sort of the firm level within school challenges. The third would be the actual career development needs of students, and consequently, what are the requirements within education today. And the fourth one really is resource viability. So those are the four things I'll talk about. So speaking of the industry, business education actually has been proliferating around the world. It has become one of the largest degrees in the undergraduate program in the US as well, but it's also rising in many other parts of the world. And I think, as Raghu said, the demand is rising dramatically. Of course, India is a young country. And so as a result, demographically, that would happen. So one of the things we can talk about is growth in the industry. However, having said that, there are some interesting questions of supply. So for example, there's a graduate enrollment ratio, GER, and India's ratio is 26% in terms of the capacity versus number of people who are eligible to go to college. By contrast, China is 48%, the UK is 60%, and the US is 80%. And so if you look at that, I think there is actually a need for capacity. So that's an important trend that we might want to think about. People need education when they are in the age group, not later. So that would, of course, portend a greater supply. But then we have a question of sort of the forces buffeting the industry. One of them is, in fact, the lack of faculty availability at the high level. If you really think about competing globally, the faculty availability, getting people who are credentialed to teach is a challenge. Online is both a challenge and an opportunity. It's a challenge in the sense of requiring new ways of instruction. It's an opportunity in terms of increasing scale in a way that you cannot do face to face. And I think in the Indian context, if that GER is at where it is, online has to be a way to go to supplement face to face. The third sort of industry element is the flight to quality. So I think, as Raghu was saying, education is, fundamental to people and to people's priorities. And as supply increases, quality may be more questionable in the lower end. So there's a flight to quality, which I think becomes a competitive race. So that's sort of the first broad domain. The second broad domain at the school level, I think at the university level, uh, besides the access to faculty, development of faculty, is the question of credentialing. And I think with this high demand, what can happen is credentialing can get diluted. And I want to make an important point here that I think we have all benefited from, people of our generation. I think the visionary approach that Vikram Sarabhai took in creating IIM Ahmedabad and Ravi Mathai, and then the other IIMs that followed a similar format, really brought them to a world-class level in the sense that many of us could compete going out to global universities. And that's when we realized that our education in India was actually high quality. So India started with very high quality master's degree programs. And I think the question really is, how do we innovate to raise it to the next level all these years later? And in that, the point really is curricular innovation. I think there has to be a lot of curricular innovation all across the board. Every school is trying to do curricular innovation. And in particular, in curricular innovation, I think Raghu mentioned entrepreneurship, which I think is really important. It's the use of online technology, but also other forms of curricular development. This generation plays a lot of games. How do we use sort of simulated markets to teach people trading? How do we teach people how to make difficult decisions? There are simulated strategy games in marketing and in strategy where you have 10 decisions that start with pricing and product introduction and go to financing and eventually partnerships and takeovers and the selection of the team. So the role of gaming in curriculum is really, really important. I think faculty outreach, I think in India, actually, there's a real opportunity because business and university ties can be built relatively easily given the urban nature of many of the schools. And I think really bringing in kind of a better internships and an apprenticeship model would be really, really important. So the third element is really about continuing education, which Dr. Raghuram also talked about. And there, the penetration of executive education in India, according to Eruditus, a company that I know well, is about between 50 and $100 million. The top 15 providers of executive education worldwide have a total revenue of $1 billion from executive education. And India has a tremendous market in executive training as well. But then we also have a supply issue in education. And my last point is just financial viability of schools, that the IIMs were generally funded by government. You cannot just compete globally only on tuition. It's very, very hard because you have to pay faculty to do research and those kinds of things. So the teaching load, as you do tuition and if you put a lot of people in front of classes, they have no time to innovate. So this tension between quality and sources of funds is really important. And what I'm suggesting is the role of endowments and the role of other financial resources that can allow schools to compete.
Thank you very much, Harbi. I believe you laid out a nice canvas in terms of what is happening in India, what it, and placed it against the global scene. move on to the second question. I'll have Raghu come in again first. In what ways can institutional leaders, Raghu, we are focusing on leadership, which is quite a challenge. In what ways can institutional leaders manage their resources while boldly attempting, I would like to underline boldly, while boldly attempting to effect desired changes in the present or prevailing challenging environment? So leadership, boldness, courage, commitment, passion, all these things come in. Yeah.
Thank you, Ganesh. So one thing is, I think management education compared to other disciplines in terms of the financial viability based on tuition, I think is a little more. Of course, if you're also able to do, institutions can do some form of executive education. Because today, while IIMs were set up with government support, but today the original 6 IIMs have absolutely no support from the government, either for their revenue operating match or capital. Entire capital development is on them. Of course, they have all started with a campus which came in from the government. In fact, quite a bit of surplus is generated by the IIMs. And that makes me believe that, of course, IIMs have a tuition that is in the range of 20 lakhs, or the new IIMs, of course, are maybe in the teens. But other institutions, I think even if you are getting into closer to a 5 lakh range, now, of course, I cannot say how many institutions are of that kind. I think there is inherent financial viability. So that's, I think, the good part of management education. Of course, there are, many resources today. I think an important way is to bring in more hybrid. In fact, even in IIMs, it is beginning to happen. Say the preparatory program for students who are viewed as not, where they need a little more in terms of some of the basics. Today is increasingly happening online through prepackaged modules. Even in regular core courses, some parts are drawn from online MOOCs. While IIMs even earlier had the idea of the flipped classroom, which today, has gained a lot of focus, meaning the student prepared before coming to class, and the class was more in terms of a discussion and a greater exploration of that topic. Otherwise, a lot of preparation was expected to happen before class. And that is beginning to happen also, not only with textbook materials or case studies, also visual material, YouTube, MOOCs. So I think those are resources that can be leveraged. Of course, we talked about specialized programs as an opportunity. And I think given the way the market scenario is in India, I think a certain boldness in looking at specialized programs is a way of institutions distinguishing themselves from other institutions. And I think that is going to be important. I mentioned again faculty, and I think that's the biggest challenge. Very difficult to get quality faculty. But I think supporting faculty, I think good TAs, many schools, I think they don't realize the value of what a TA can do to a faculty in terms of taking away some of the drudgery related to delivery. And TAs would come in because they are in a learning mode. It's not necessarily a career. The TA unlocks a lot of faculty time for value-added activities, because ultimately quality and how you shape the mind of the student is how the faculty themselves, get excited by keeping themselves up to date and then get into a class to sort of share that excitement. A doctoral program ideally should also be a resource. Institutional leaders should look at it, because I think, number one, it will create faculty material. Second, they can provide a lot of support and sounding board assistance in the research part of the journey to the faculty. So I would hope that more and more second level institutions, I mean, IIMs already do it, and many other, if you will, A category institutions in India do it, but we are talking, how can more come into that journey? And I think that's another important resource that institutional leaders have to look at. Of course, different pedagogical tools. We've already talked about cases. We've talked about online video content, plenty of which is available, and it can be curated, not just MOOCs, but otherwise, and curated appropriately in the classroom. Games, of course, Harbi just mentioned that. I think these are a variety of resources that an institutional leader should be able to use. And, of course, I don't want to get into the question 3, but I think, again, I want to end on the note of the faculty being a critical resource. And I think the institutional leader needs to protect the non-teaching time of faculty. I find that in too many institutions in India, once you get a faculty, somehow trying to get the best out of the faculty translates to getting them to teach more. That is not a wise approach at all. And we must protect non-teaching time of the faculty to enable them to do case writing, their passion in terms of whatever research they wish to follow. Of course, we may put performance expectations that there should be written output, because written output helps structure the thinking, the very fact that you get written communication. And I'm specifically saying written output rather than publication necessarily in peer-reviewed journals. While that's a good thing, I fear sometimes that has taken the pendulum a little away from retaining focus on high quality delivery in the classroom. But, case writing, writing even in the business press, op-ed pieces, these are things that can come out as a result of the non-teaching time of the faculty, which should be protected. Let me stop here. Yeah.
Thank you, Raghu. I think I'll shift over to the podium. Might be a little more comfortable and probably good for the sound also. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Is it okay? Raghu, can you hear me better now?
Definitely. I think, yeah.
So this works. So perhaps this was a very, very nano, bold step to shift the location. Yeah. Okay. Great. Raghu, I was very fascinated by the last 2 points you made. Of course, the general resources that you touched upon are obviously well in our radar in terms of financial viability, the hybrid courses, the preparatory courses, specialized programs, and support faculty. In fact, I would like Harbir to also share his experiences, because the support faculty is a very fascinating concept. Even in India, all of us know
that the designation professor of practice is of recent origins. It has happened in the last few years across a wider set of institutions. I am aware of individual institutions that have had professors of practice even over the last 15 years. I'm aware of that. But if you're looking at a wider set of institutions, this new breed of faculty, professor of practice, is of recent origins in our country. So support faculty, this is a very interesting thing. Can we look at a new track of faculty who could add value in the classroom, okay, and who could also contribute to the repute of an institution? And the last 2 points, which really fascinated me, I'm repeating your words, Raghu. The leader should protect the non-teaching time of the faculty. I would say you hit it on the head. You really hit the nail on the head, okay? And the second, a really interesting challenge where I would be with you, Raghu, the challenge of high quality research publications in the best of journals, A-star, very high impact. Of course, I don't go by only FT50 because I'm acutely aware that there are several journals whose impact factors are n times those appearing in FT50. So we should be very, very careful about what we are talking. Okay, but FT50 is good, nevertheless. Okay, so publications, high quality publications versus high quality content and delivery. That's a very interesting debate you've started. Okay, given that, Harbir, I would like to get to you and seek your inputs on this issue as to what can institutional leaders, what should they do to manage resources in order to, hit the next level, if I may use that term.
Well, thank you. I think, I want to acknowledge also the very continued success of the IIMs and ISB in the FT rankings, for example. I think the Indian schools do very well as a group in that domain, which suggests competitiveness on the quality of students and also the quality of curriculum. Having said that, I think a couple of things that we might want to talk about. One of them is, in fact, the supply of PhDs. I think you need larger PhD programs in India. And I think that's what Raghuram was saying, that we need to increase the supply of PhDs, which I think to foster the growth that is happening and maintaining quality. And I think what that does, it's not the PhD alone as a credential, it's more the idea of generating new knowledge and new ideas that can be brought into the curriculum, speeding up innovation in the school. And actually doctoral students can be both teaching assistants and people who create some of this content. I think that's an important thing. And the second thing, I think what you brought up, Dr. Ganesh, is really important, is competing in the market for ideas. We need to compete in the market for ideas by having influential publications. And I think that also there's plenty of good work happening, but as in terms of bold steps, I think that's something besides protecting non-teaching time, it's actually also sort of channeling it towards competing in the market for ideas. And I understand the idea about journals versus other publications. I think that's a very good point that Dr. Raghuram made. I think one of the other important issues is really around curricular innovation. And I think that will happen as intensity of competition increases. It's a lot of competition here, for example. And so there is ongoing, in particular, the role of online and hybrid teaching styles. So for example, what material should be asynchronous and what should be synchronous when it's online, and what should be in person. I think that combination is going to be really, really important, because you can leverage faculty with more asynchronous material. And I'm actually teaching a course. We went online for a year, and one of my co-instructors, as you can see, I teach both in the Arts and Science College and in the business school. He does mostly asynchronous, and then the classroom is just literally discussion. My online part is synchronous, and the discussion is also synchronous, and some of it is face-to-face. There's a lot of options there. You can offload, for example, problem sets. You can offload some of the debits and credits in accounting and so on, and then come to the policy questions in class. And it's not just pre-case and post-case. It's actually teaching through a progression online. So there'll be a lot of curricular innovation which will separate schools as we go further down, I think. The last point I will make is what you just mentioned, the idea of the practice professor. I think business schools can benefit a lot by bringing in people who have lots of industry experience and have sort of conceptualized about it to the classroom. We are doing quite a lot of that these days. I would say about 15% of our teaching is by people who are not on the tenure track faculty. And that is, I think, interesting. It may be 10%, but I think the demand actually is higher. Some schools have designated practice professors. We actually have a range of options there. I'm going to end by just saying that as we go further, the importance of relevance is going to be very important, relevance to practice. And I actually do not think that relevance to practice and teaching quality are, in fact, are orthogonal. I think they're highly correlated. And so I think faculty need to also be encouraged to think about the practical applications of their work and bring it into the classroom. So that issue of relevance and of research and intellectual activity and teaching needs to be encouraged institutionally. I think that's an important point.
Great. Thank you, Herbie. Thank you. In fact, I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions regarding this different track for faculty. It is academic, but rooted in the world of practice. And not only that, in my observations, I've seen the value that these faculty members can bring to the classroom. Because what I could observe was that they help young people, young students, to understand uncertainties in the world of work a little better, and therefore prepare them a little better in terms of what they should anticipate while they're working on. We all know that the theory normally does represent some part of reality, but reality is dominated more by uncertainty. And helping students to understand those uncertainties, the sources of uncertainties and risks, and articulating their own responses is a very interesting contribution from the faculty. We move on to the last question before we go to the Q&A. So what should be the significant changes in the mindsets? I wish to underscore the word mindsets again. What should be the significant changes in the mindsets and consequently the practices of institutional leaders and faculty members together as a team in their initiatives and efforts to offer top quality and perfect value management education to their students? And don't forget, many students, or almost all the students in management education, are getting exposed to that body of knowledge for the first time. Raghu?
Yeah. So a couple of things that come to my mind here are, one is, I guess like in any leadership position, stakeholder management is critical. So we need to be conscious of our different stakeholders of the institution that the leader is heading, and be able to understand their aspirations and how to take it along. So you have students, of course, you have faculty, then you would have the admin staff. There are many times tensions between the admin staff and the faculty. You have the recruiters, and then you could have your board members who at some level are overall setting direction, and many times offering greater legitimacy to the institution, because you kind of take shelter that it's a board decision, and therefore you get the increased legitimacy of doing something. So I think one is the stakeholder management is very important. The second, following up from the faculty point, I think, is to be able to hold and see the value of the non-teaching time that is provided to the faculty. And, and in whatever way opportunities can be created for the faculty to enrich themselves in that aspect. And in a way that it synergizes with the classroom. Here, I do see in many other institutions, sometimes the leader gets into a role, maybe a tempting role of telling faculty, do this, or, why don't you go for this event, or why don't you? Personally, I think it's very important that in an institution, faculty ownership is viewed as a very important mantra of how an academic institution should grow. So the leader should, if at all, watch out what excites the different faculty and then play a role from behind. I mean, there is a bit of from the front and from the behind. You do create opportunities, you show how one can excel, but from behind is gentle nudges and creation of opportunities. Putting in place systems and holding people responsible to systems. In fact, allowing faculty voice in creating systems, be it systems of performance, systems of curricular innovation, systems of approval of curricula. I mean, there are too many institutions where, and when I say too many, I'm talking the large number of, I mean, if I can, in a loose way, say B+, A- institutions in India, large number of management schools, where very often they say, oh, the director wanted the curriculum or the course title to be this, and therefore, I mean, to me, that's a no-no. It has to be evoked from the faculty. The leader can at best mirror, ask questions, and a lot of emotional energy is required for that. So I think those are very important. And I'm again bringing faculty as a centerpiece because, you know, in educational institutions, there is a creative process, and the best you will get in that creative process if you can create greater ownership of faculty. In fact, many times I often say that a director's role may sometimes have to be, how do you de-directorize? I mean, you are there, you're watching, but you know, you ought not to be felt as somebody who's sort of pushing things around. And that should come as far as possible bottom up. So I would say those are the important sort of, at least a mindset. And, you know, if that is done, of course, the other mindset, which is a debate about whether students should be viewed, are they customers or, you know, are they many times because they are paying, and, you know, tuition is increasing. In when I said even 5 lakhs, that would be a high tuition for many institutions. But I think there is a bit of both, and that's a very interesting play there. One has to listen to students, but at the same time, there are very clear do's and don'ts, very clear expectations of performance, and you know, very clear if somebody wants a change of session, change of you know, whatever, which comes out of taking a softer way out. I think the ability to put one's foot down or creating systems to do that becomes important. I think I'm going to leave it there in terms of what kind of values the, you know, institution leader should have or should seek to imbibe in the institution. Yeah.
Thank you, Raghu. I mean, you did touch upon, I mean, keeping the mindset issue in the forefront, stakeholder management, but synergizing non-teaching time with classroom efforts. And I like that idea of leaders, within quotes, telling faculty what they should do, and versus faculty ownership, and trying for the leader to try to take up a perspective of identifying the faculty interests and helping them, you know, synergize, and also the argument of playing from behind and from front, and distinguishing when you need to do what, and putting systems in place. And I like that question, how do you feel directorized? In fact, very often, even in our institution, when we have tea discussions, we talk of The problem is not with the head of the department. The problem is that this chap thinks he's the head of the department. And that's really dangerous, you know. And that kind of a point does come out very often, you know. And of course, the last question, are students really customers, or how do we treat students? Harbir, what are your thoughts on this whole issue of mindsets and changing practices and providing the top quality management education to students who are learning management for the first time?
Well, I think Raghu made some very good points which are relevant to and we are in the same industry, as it were. So I think I would echo much of what Raghu was saying. I'll put it, I'll add something different. And that is, I'm going to talk about two triples. One of them is, how do schools compete? What is the triple on which schools compete? Schools compete in the market for ideas, schools compete on delivery, and schools compete on deep understanding of phenomena. There are three dimensions: phenomena, ideas, and delivery. I think it's the job of, in terms of mindset, the community needs to understand whether we are maximizing in these three areas or not. In other words, it's not a compensatory model where we say we will not devote as much attention to practice because we are so good at theory, or we will not focus that much on theory because we're so good on delivery. It's a non-compensatory model. That's the first point. The second point, there's another triple that leaders and people in the institution need to worry about, and that is talent, diversity, and innovation. I think the culture has to support all three things. And I think what Raghu was saying was right on the money in terms of talent, that a hierarchical setup will obviously not allow for diversity of ideas as much. So the talent has to be sort of nurtured and given full autonomy, including the ability to challenge the ideas within the system itself about what maybe senior people or well-known people did, and it happens all the time. So talent is really about also competing in the market for faculty and winning that market. And what that requires for the institution to do, and this is the point I want to stress, is from a cultural point of view, are we a good destination for faculty? Are we able to win against others based upon our culture? I think that's extremely important on the talent front. On innovation, I think it's not just innovation in delivery, it's also innovation in ideas. And I would say that one of the places that all business schools have not done a great job with is really connecting, bringing in people who have deep knowledge of practice and leveraging them in the classroom. And that's what I mean about commitment to practice. And I think there are low-hanging fruit here which we can use, which is to bring in people who are live case studies in addition to the topic that we're looking at. So I think that's an example of the innovation piece. And then on diversity, there's plenty of research that shows that diversity, not just in gender and in religion and so on, but diversity of discipline, diversity of ideas is crucial. And I think let 1,000 flowers bloom is actually the mindset, not sort of we specialize in X or Y. That's what we have learned.
Thank you, Harbi. In fact, the last point you made concerning diversity brings to my mind the very famous Ashby's law of requisite variety that's used in knowledge. It's a very, very important universal law, which definitely needs to be understood by all intellectuals, you know, because the more we cut down on variety, the more vulnerable we become to adverse risks and adverse uncertainty. So this is something which is very good that you touched upon. Now that we have had this set of inputs from our panelists on those three questions, and we are sort of getting into the Q&A right now, I felt that it will be very good to listen to the comments and views and questions of members who are participating in this, either on the floor here or on the internet. Okay? So the floor is open for questions to the panelists, and I'm sure even Ram Kumar can chip in. Maybe I'll request Ram Kumar to give a very brief account of what his mental model of this panel discussion has been. Okay? Ram Kumar, can you please?
Yeah, I think you have captured and summarized it very well, and I don't want to take away too much time from the question and answers. We have very little time. But I only took away these 3-4 things very quickly to summarize. This is a very attractive industry, is what Raghu said and what Harbir also said. I expected Harbir to say it. Being a strategy professor, he has to start with industry attractiveness and then go down to the firm's attractiveness as well. And I think it seems to be a universal problem. The degrees vary, the faculty development, because I have gone through this in the, I am both guys sitting in interviews, after which I've called Raghuram 2-3 times how to enhance this quality, and the kind of people we are getting for interviews is not at all making us happy. Then we are talking about, I mean, Harbir also talked about, today we are saying there are too many schools. According to Harbir, we don't have as many schools as we should have. If you go by whatever you talked about, gross enrollment ratio, right? GER, which is 26%. That means imagine it has to be something like 2 to 3 times what it is. So my view on this, angle which both of them didn't say, is I'm telling Raghu, being here in India, is there a new business opportunity for academicians like you and others who can actually revive all these schools and make them of high quality? Because I think that requires a very special effort. I'm talking about a consultant group which will look at only making this more robust and then give a blueprint for making a high quality education thing. Because somebody's charging 5 lakhs, somebody's charging 20 lakhs. Looks like if you can give good education, even charging 10 lakhs will be much easier because they'll be employable, people will be willing to take them. This is the only point which I said. All the other points, I think whatever has been said are very valid. Obviously requires a lot of thinking, and we need to work on them. That's all I have to say, Dr. Ganesh. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ram Kumar. Thank you. So now we'll open the floor. We have a little over half an hour for the question and answer sessions, which was right according to what we had planned out. So,
Thank you, Professor. I
Vijay
think you
Kumar.
can take your seat. We can hand over the
you
mic.
want me to come there? Okay.
Yes, because the question will be addressed to you too now. You are on the panel. Thank you so much for the panelists. We got a number of questions on YouTube, social media. First, I'll take the questions what has come in the chat box. I'll read them out so that one of you can respond. It's a question which has come from one of the MMA members. It is often said that management education will also reinvent itself to be in tune with the talent requirement 21st century. Core management concept remaining the same. Can the panel suggest 2 major changes that can be implemented in this regard? Could you repeat that last part?
Yes.
Please?
I think it's about 2 major changes that we have to do in management education to keep it contemporary. I think. Maybe Raghu and then Harbir can go. Raghu?
Sorry, yeah, no, what were you reading? 2 changes?
3
2
major
changes you can suggest in the current education, current system of education that will make it more contemporary, in tune with the times, whatever.
Yeah. So, but is this again, are you reading from the question which is talking about the mindset of students or no? Anyway, to me, I think in management education, I think first of all, the focus is really on the delivery. I mean, content is fine. We need curricular innovation. But I think the bigger part of curricular innovation is really more the pedagogy, because you're getting students to think, to do critical thinking, and I think the more we can emphasize on that, so maybe to achieve that, maybe more faculty development programs is, I think, one thing that needs to happen in the country. And maybe even institutions like MMAs, etc., where you bring in supply of faculty from maybe institutions where there is certain credibility that things are happening well, and provide that as an opportunity. I mean, I know IIMs do faculty development programs, but in a year they take 30, 40, but you need large numbers. So I think that's one change that we can bring in. The second, I think, is, of course, I think a greater focus on entrepreneurship. because today India is a very sort of fertile ground for that. And I think many of our students do think about becoming entrepreneurs. Um, so can a program nudge them? Can a management program nudge them towards it and give them at least a framework to approach what it means to be an entrepreneur? So they know that whatever they are going through, failures or their own emotional issues, it's not something that's very specific to them. So they have that comfort, and at least they can give it a good shot. 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, make it work. If not, okay, or go back to an organized sector, come back after a few years. I think the more we can sort of create that hunger for entrepreneurship, which can be done through modules, through more courses as part of an MBA program. So I would suggest these are two things that, yeah.
So Ganesh, maybe we go to the next question. I would like to. Would we like to hear Harbir also?
Yes.
Harbir,
Would you like to share
any views on, say, 2 or 3 significant changes that you would like to see?
Yes, I heard, besides what Raghu said, which are obviously clearly important, so I will add a couple more. One of them is in the area of creating incubators for businesses during the program, have a business incubator in the school, and also have some ties with venture capital. And I think some schools are doing that. And for example, you could have a contest. We have a situation where we have a contest of business plans, and many schools are doing that. And then there's the winners are given the opportunity, some funding to actually work on that for the next year. And so that's kind of giving them an incentive to not sort of immediately go out and get a job. So the notion of incubator is really important. That's the point I want to make. The second point, actually, it was Harish Kumar's chat, which I thought was very interesting. The point about the whole person, that education is not just cognitive, it's also experiential. And I think there's a lot of importance given now to thinking about the whole person, work-life balance, but also developing, I think one of the most fundamental skills is crisp communication and developing those skills as well. But really thinking about personal development and coaching in addition to the cognitive curriculum.
Thank you. Here's a question from YouTube. We are from Jaipur. One Mr. Gulati. What do you want to know? It's often said that management education will also reinvent itself to in tune with talent requirement of the 21st century. Core management concepts remaining the same, can the panel suggest 2 or 3 major changes that can be brought about in management education, particularly in India?
Vijay, is it not similar to the question which was just asked? Maybe we can go to the next question, I thought.
Sorry? Looks like a corollary question.
It looks very similar to the question that has been answered. Probably we can move on to the next question.
Mr. Kandasamy Bharathan in the chat box is saying,
Personalized learning is the buzzword in education today and gets spoken a lot. Is the personalized education is a possibility in management education? Yeah, I think Kandasamy Bharathan is also an IME alumnus. And
batchmate. He's a batchmate of us, actually. Yeah.
Education feasible, in management. Harbir, would you like to answer that first? To what extent is
the audio was a little bit shaky. What was just the quick summary of the question?
To what extent is personalized education feasible in management education?
I think that's a very, very thoughtful question from our friend Kandaswamy. I think some schools have gone with a very high degree of electives versus core. I think University of Chicago, for example, at least as of 2 years ago, had only 4 required courses. Everything else was elective. And that's one way of personalizing. And the idea was let the marketplace decide which courses students want. And of course, there's a disciplinary thread going through. So that's one of the issues. The second way to personalize is really to take the internship seriously. I think that's one way of really having students experiment with what they might do later on, and that includes entrepreneurship. A third one is the coaching point I mentioned, and I think that's true in our mid-career program in particular, that we actually offer coaching to students on their own individual goals.
So
Yeah.
if I can add, yeah, thanks, Harbir. I think just building on that, I think today MOOCs, as part of electives, you can actually allow students to do pick up MOOCs and earn their grade or whatever the MOOCs does. That gives a huge scope. Of course, many, for example, at IIMs, the second year literally was all electives. The other thing that happens is that you do projects in courses, within courses, a certain kind of weightage. So that also gets personalized. Maybe a whole term. If you're a trimester model, maybe the last but one term or the last term is again, an exploratory term where, customization happens. So only thing is, I don't know whether customization needs more hand holding, or you give the credits for free and you only kind of, well, assess the student. But I don't know, I'm just thinking whether there should be a little more structure to enable that personalized part of the education. And let me also add on the point that Harbir mentioned earlier, that Harish Kumar has raised, and I think it's extremely important. Especially in India, we are talking about, is there anything like Indian management? Is Indian philosophy playing a role? And after all, so much of thought has gone into a lot of these philosophical works and philosophical traditions that India has. I think, why isn't management education, which lot of its paradigms, when it came in a formal way, has come directly from the West. But it's definitely time to think about, where you want to, that holistic aspect that Harbir talked about. Are there principles that a lot of our Indian thought offers? And I think on this count, I would be, very comfortable saying that Indian thought is substantially ahead of many other cultures in the world. And I think we need to leverage that to make a better self. Only thing is, Harish also refers to, would this not require a top-down approach? Again, I'm not sure. My personal belief is it should be bottom up. And to give you the example of IIM Bangalore, I mean, there are faculty from quantitative methods or operations management or from economics who, apart from doing their normal teaching, as part of their personal growth over years, have explored in creating courses around Indian management thought and creating electives. And there are many students who take this, whether it is learning about Gita or learning about Sanatana Dharma or learning about, any other sort of looking at the, better awareness or reflecting on the self. So these kind of courses are there and many students take them. I think it is important that the leader doesn't stand in the way, or there could be people who are critical about these kind of explorations by some of the faculty. I think in the true liberal spirit of education, the leader should protect this sort of exploration, and hopefully, it will grow. Yeah.
May I add something to what Raghu is saying? I think on the whole person, there's actually one more piece. There are two more pieces that are really important, part A and part B. Part A is ethics. We actually have, about 20 years ago, we began developing an ethics curriculum specifically because of all the, the things in the news about scandals and so on, but just trying to understand how we can leverage values. And this is what Raghu is saying, that values are really instilled in people in early years. And how do you kind of think about that and think about ethics from that point of view? I want to make one point that's really interesting that we learned just by coincidence, and that was that our much of our ethics program is taught from a philosophical bent, not a moral bent and not a legal bent. When you go philosophically, then I think it actually becomes what you were saying, Raghu, this issue about comparative systems of what is moral and what is ethical behavior. So that's, I think, really important. The second point very quickly I want to make is emphasizing teamwork. We found that our students were very good at their own work, but when they got into the workplace, they hadn't really confronted being in a team and being an effective team player. You want to get your feedback while you're in school, not while you're at work. So the teamwork idea, actually having developmental work around understanding what makes you a better team player and what do you need to do to enhance that.
Thank you, Harbir. I have another question. I don't have the names of the people who have asked the questions, but this seems to be from a student, and it's a very interesting question. Okay? So keep in mind that this actually, there's a very high probability that the question has come from a student. The question follows. We see several arguments on which college is better than another. Now that all students are learning through online platforms, what are some criteria that we should consider while choosing or shortlisting colleges nowadays? I hope the question is clear. The student seems to be seeing online as a great leveler. Raghu, would you like to answer that?
Yeah.
If you're a student, what criteria would you use to shortlist colleges?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
whatever. Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm not exactly in tune with the younger generation or the way maybe education is moving. Maybe it's also how I have been brought up and, whatever way I look at things. While people do talk about today that one can go on an educational journey by doing micro aspects of education picked up from online platforms or in some institution as would be relevant, maybe in an immediate sense, or it is possible. I mean, it is possible that though we have not talked about it, that the concept of a degree and a pre-designed package will lose. Many people say that this could happen. I have not yet come to terms with it. To me, there is still a sense of ownership. Who has ownership of an educational journey to get you to be transformed as a critical thinking person in a particular domain? I think I still come from the school where people who are aware of this and what are the critical elements of this journey sort of put things together, and there is some hand-holding and expectation of your going through that journey. So even though that journey today may involve more online, more different pedagogies, instead of doing a program in 2 years, maybe it could be done in 3 years or 4 years. Yes, I think these changes possibly would happen, but I would still give high value in choosing a school as to what extent that institution takes ownership of a defined educational journey. Yeah.
Harbir,
Yeah.
what
So
do you would be a good answer to this question?
I think I agree with Raghu. I think when it comes to choice of college, it's also credentialing that's important. And credentialing, I think employers here also, with all the online options, they still look at the credential. And I want to emphasize the idea of the learning journey. And there, for example, a standard curriculum kind of for example, you may not know at that stage that you need, and this is a very common debate students have. Those who are very quantitative say, I don't need anything on leadership, it's just subjective. I want to just be the math guy. And they still have to do a course on leadership. So there are certain things that are required for you to through the understanding of the journey, and I think those are important. Having said that, what online really offers, which is very good, and many students are doing it, is to take courses in specialized areas that can supplement what your school is offering. So choice of college really is based on credentialing and the journey, but I think there's a tremendous wealth of courses one can take to upskill. I view these courses as upskilling courses.
Okay, Dr. Ganesh here, Shostin, and we have over 1,600 viewers watching this program live. There's a question addressed to Dr. Harbi in the chat box. I thought I'll read it out before you go to the next question. He said Dr. Harbi spoke about curriculum innovation, which has become extremely critical as real-life situations in business world are rapidly fluctuating in terms of volatility, uncertainty, and complexity. How are Western institutions and B schools dealing with this challenge of curricular innovation?
So I think there is all schools all over the world are trying to do that, and I know Indian schools are also doing a very good job with that. But the point is really there's a lot of new research on decision making under uncertainty, and specifically biases in decision making. So people are offering courses around not just a straight quantitative maximization, but also what might be biases in decision making. So that's one point. A second point really is around exposing people to games that are trading based. So if you're in a marketplace and you're trading, you learn about some of the shocks that might be present and how you would respond to the shocks. So you can deal with uncertainty intellectually, but you also have to deal with uncertainty from a personal kind of behavioral standpoint and ask yourself, what is my degree of loss aversion? What is my degree of risk aversion? And how might I think about that? So experiential courses in addition to traditional mathematical or case-based courses.
Okay, I wish to pose a question to the two of you. Okay? I'm taking off from the question possibly from a student. Do you believe that there is a world in which, given the development and evolution of online education, especially in recent times, do you think it's possible for a student to pick and choose online courses offered by different institutions, integrate them together to form a valid certification? And would there be an agency that would vet such a certification, saying that, okay, this combination of courses is on, it's acceptable? What do you say? Is there a possibility at least?
May I tackle that first? I think that's a very good question. And actually, if you look at computer science, you see a lot of credentialing that is certificate based and it is substantive. So I think it is, we can look at our industry as degree and non-degree. And in the non-degree front, there is a possibility of certification for certain things, but it is at the moment unorganized. So I think the point here is that students can try to pick and choose courses that they think are of highest quality, and many institutions are offering certificates which are sequencing them together. For example, a certificate in analytics could be one, business analytics. And I think that is not in conflict with a degree program. So, and that's an innovation that's happening today. And the last point I'll make is part of curricular innovation is what can you do online asynchronous, and what do you do online physical synchronous and face-to-face. And that's where schools can also leverage a bit of what's available online. And I think the world is headed in that direction.
What do you feel about that possibility?
I'm sorry, I did not get the audio there.
Do you see a possibility where a student can pick and choose online courses in combination, courses that are actually offered by different teachers from different institutions, and have a certification that could be vetted by a valid agency?
Well, I think that's a whole different. I think that's where you get into a fundamental issue in business education itself. That should there be certification in general of some form, like in you have in law or in medicine or chartered accounting and so on. But I think there are institutions that offer sequences. I think what you're saying is an interesting point because people may string together a good set of courses or an incompatible set of courses or a low quality set of courses. And so what is going to determine what's a valid certificate? I think that's where I think institutional practices are lagging where the market is, and eventually they'll catch up. So I'll defer to Raghu because some of this applies to the Indian market also.
Yeah.
As a metaphor, I'll help you. It's almost like a playlist of courses.
So can I come in? So first of all, I just want to say that IIM Bangalore has picked up a lot of experience in this domain. So there are three ways in which this happens. So one is, well, first of all, again, faculty in the institution have to take ownership. It is one thing to say, go and do some MOOCs and come. I think if faculty themselves look at the MOOCs, and I'm sure a faculty can, quickly go through a MOOC, a massive open online course. That's what Harbir keeps referring to as asynchronous. And one can curate. You can say, like, he said analytics, or so maybe you want to do 3 courses in analytics, and maybe 1 or 2 of them can come in from a MOOC, and the faculty can look through and see a set of MOOCs and say, look, from within this set, you please do it, or please do this and the next, follow it through. So I think that effort of curating is important. That is one. Second, one can also use MOOCs. And for that matter, I think there is also other excellent video content. Like case studies, you can use a MOOC, and you can say a MOOC a 6-hour MOOC, for example. You can say the first half an hour, or from time 120 to time 155 of that MOOC. Please go through that, and we will then the next week we will build on it. So that's another way in which, because see, remember, the MOOCs content is coming from faculty from across the world, whether it is on the edX platform, on the Coursera platform, or the MHRD in India has the Swayam platform. Technological courses, IITs have developed NPTEL. So, there is significant content available. The third is at least faculty themselves developing MOOCs. And now IIMB is one institution where today they have about 50 MOOCs on different subjects. And faculty who teach these, in some programs, they may say, no, you just do the MOOC. In some programs, they build parts of it into their synchronous delivery. So I think, it's just creation of additional material in this format. And I think these are all ways. And I think, to me, the faculty themselves should certify, by appropriately curating it.
Thank you, Professor. One last question for this evening, which has come from the YouTube viewer from Pondicherry. What do you want to know? The personalized learning is the buzzword in education today and gets spoken a lot. Is the personalized is already asked?
Yeah, that was asked. Personalized learning.
This come again. You have, sir. I think we have all most of the things are statements.
Yeah, this is a question. Believe could be from a faculty. Okay, which is interesting because it builds your teaching learning. The question is, do you think that a new pedagogy or teaching learning process is required as both teachers and students struggle to adjust to the digital medium? So do you think that a new teaching learning process is required, given the rise of the digital medium? If yes, what changes do you expect to see?
Harbir?
I think there are changes because of the digital medium. I think just a couple of them I will point out. One of them is offloading certain content to the digital format, including short video clips and exercises and so on. That is like a self-guided tour of a particular topic and getting to a certain level of proficiency, and then having the output evaluated digitally. So I think that's sort of one of the important areas: class time versus digital offloading time. The second one is, if you go online, then you cannot have long lectures or didactic presentations, and you need to use some interactive means as well. So that's the second one. So it's, short 10 or 12-minute content, and then some exercise, because otherwise the fatigue sets in, ability to process is also difficult. The third one is really using the digital medium through simulations and through actually content that is digital. Simulations and games, I think, are extremely important, and people are becoming very sophisticated in the use of some of these simulations, which might substitute, for example, a case study. So there's curricular innovation of three sorts in this area.
Raghu?
Yeah, no, I think we have spoken a lot on this. So I think curricular innovation, there are many more formats coming in, and I think we should do that. I think, to me, again, from a process point of view, have we enabled faculty sufficiently to be not necessarily on a dramatically changed curriculum mode, but on a continuous improvement mode, and keep on evolving the curriculum? And I think that's what will keep it fresh and exciting, both for the students and for the faculty.
Thank you. Since the group captain had already indicated last question, I'm going to do something which is not common in panel discussions, but useful. Here is a question to the audience, and you can post your answers to Group Captain Vijay Kumar MMA. Okay. The question concerns a point which we have not discussed explicitly in today's panel discussion, but which is connected directly with the last question. Okay. In what ways the members of the audience, both students as well as faculty, perhaps even industry professionals who were students once upon a time, in what ways do you feel that evaluation of learning by a student will have to change given the kind of technologies that we are employing in our education today? What ways do you think evaluation of students, individual performance, as well as perhaps team and group performance, do you feel we can have some very useful, very different and very constructive models of academic learning performance evaluation? So that's the question to you. And on that note, let me say thank you to MMA, and I hope some of you will respond to that question and send your answers to MMA, which we will share on behalf of MMA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. It's an excellent question. And who's our answer, the best answer to this question? I can assure you, we're going to give a special prize from MMA. It'll be given.
I don't mind sponsoring a nice treat for them.
Yes, it's a fascinating evening. I must say, it's over 1,650 viewers are watching this program live, as I mentioned. Thank you, Professor Raghuram, Harbir, and thank you, Mr. Ramkumar. Professor L.S. Ganesh, as usual, has been one of the best evening. So much of insights have come, and because this subject is so vast, there's no time limit. We can keep discussing. Ramkumar, would you like to say before that, on behalf of Mr. Ramkumar and Madras Management Association, would like to present to our distinguished speakers as a token of our appreciation. This is what we do to all our speakers. We present about 400 face masks.
Thank you.
Thank you for really accepting our offer to present the mask on your behalf to the people as a token of your appreciation. Thank you so much. Ramkumar would like to say something, otherwise we are coming to the end of the program. Ramkumar?
No, thank you. I think thank you very much, and thanks everybody for participation in large numbers, and thank all the speakers. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thanks once again.
Thank you for organizing this. Thank you, Ram. And
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
And
Much
Harbi
appreciated.
Watching the program live, all
Ganesh.
and all the batchmates of IMA, Mr. Ramkumar's batchmate, we could see them in big number. We look forward to seeing you more often in MMA events, and you share your email ID. I'll make sure that you get all our communication to you. Thanks, Mr. Ramkumar, for facilitating this evening. I'm quite sure we in the future to kindle the thought process of many educational institutions, which need quite often. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm happy we finished 30 seconds before Harbeen wanted to get on to the next program. Thanks all of you. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thanks, Harbir.